Starting the stream, and you're too late, but you get blub blub bird derb. That one.
There's a notification. Super late.
Strap to the heart, you're to blame.
Scoot it in. Scoot it in. Pull it in.
Pull it in, plug it out. Genus Brewing. That's me.
Push it. Bop it. Pull it.
Bop it.
Twist it. Smack it. Flick it.
Pamela Hakla, good morning. It's good to see you the other day. And now I can hear myself. Jimmy J, good morning. Stefan Stagler, good morning. KO Brewing, good morning. Wilfred Lopsfilowitz, good morning. Scott Crosby, good morning. Morning, everybody. Sorry we're late. I blame our children. Not our actual children, but the children that we take care of on a day-to-day basis in real life, which is our employees. But
for not putting stuff back where it should go.
Yeah, I set up a whole new light, so if we look a little bit less lit, that's because it's a smaller light. Because the light that we're used to using is actually in the back somewhere.
Jerks.
Those jerks, they're fired. Okay, they're rehired because we can't live without them. But for a second they knew they were fired, and that's the moral. That's moral victory. What do we call it? What do we call it?
I mean, victory of some sort.
Yeah.
At least.
I think we got a Facebook message. Kurt Witt, are you streaming today? Yes. But we
live response right now.
Late.
All right. Fun Genus news. Matt, the moderator guy behind the computer, if you will. Although this one's definitely not going to turn into Hobgoblin. Spoiler alert for those of you that have not read the comic.
Guy in the chair.
Yeah.
Ned.
He made it to the second round of the Inland Brewers Unite Homebrewers contest that Humble Abode is putting on because he made awesome beer.
Yeah. Check out Humble Abode on all their social medias if you want to follow the homebrew contests that they do. They're actually a really good brewery that helps build the homebrewer network in Spokane. One of the awesome people that are helping build just the homebrewing lifestyle in the world.
Except for they always forget to bring in beer when they come in, and I'm going to shame you for that part. I mean, keep coming in and keep making wonderful beer, but please bring us some. You're all the way across Spokane. That is a long distance for us to drive. And if you're coming anyway, you might as well just bring us beer.
Lisa says we're both color coordinated with our tables.
No, yeah, I mean, kind of, yeah. A little bit. We planned that out, 100%. Got to be on fleek. I think that's still a thing.
On fleek? Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's never going to go away.
Never going to go
It's so
away.
fetch.
It is.
That's a thing, right?
It's 100% like... I was trying to figure a great one. I'm going to go with tubular. There we go.
Totally tubular.
All right.
Fun new seltzers coming out from the Tim Brain. We are starting a sour seltzer series, and so right now we got on sour watermelon. I think we're still in the need to R&D it, but it's tasting really good as is because our seltzer base is really awesome. And then we put on a lemonade stone fruit lemonade seltzer, which that's probably one of the best seltzers I've ever had in my entire life.
It's juice. Definitely can't taste the alcohol in it, and it makes it rather dangerous, which is pretty darn awesome. I'm enjoying that one a whole hell of a lot.
Yeah, Matt drank a gallon of it this morning.
I watched him.
Yep. That happened.
That's and the sour seltzers are pretty fun. I saw the Bud Light had some in the store, and I went, those probably taste like crap, and decided to make our own. Yeah. And, reading the ingredients, there's sucralose in there. Like, why the hell are you adding fake sugar into your seltzer?
Makes zero sense.
That just makes it taste even worse. Don't do it. Like, don't add the fake sugar in. If you're going to add fake sugar, at least add a good one like monk fruit.
Or stevia.
Or, just don't add it and make it taste gross.
Yeah, sucralose tastes like medicine. Sucralose, aspartame... Not good. No bueno.
I get it from stevia, too. It's such a flat flavor.
Yeah, stevia is at least natural, though.
You know?
It's not built in a lab. It comes from a plant.
Yeah.
But it's still, yeah. Monk fruit's the best one because it tastes rich and earthy.
Yeah. So, you know, it's also taking seltzers in a completely different way on there. Getting into the sour game with that, having some fun. In all honesty, I'm really trying to hit dumb fruity flavors. I mean, a sour Jolly Rancher flavor is kind of what I'm aiming for a few of these.
Yep. Tim's goal in life has always been to get white girl wasted, and
oh God,
you know, this
every
is
day
one step in the right direction.
Are you kidding me? Like 2 Trulies be off my ass and have everybody take care of me and buy me beverages.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like the life.
Yeah. When he wears his mini skirt, he gets pretty close. We brewed a blonde ale. Tell us about that.
Blonde keeping up with the light beer in here. I mean, pretty basic blonde. A whole bunch of Heidelberg malt to it. We got some caramel pills and a little bit of aromatic malt just to give it some flavor. There was an experimental hop that went in there. I think it was 568. 568. Give it a little bit of fun new flavor to it. Fermented it out with Lutra. It's supremely drinkable. I mean, you taste it and go, wow, that is a beer I just anyway, that is a beer I just want to drink a lot of, and you know, that's good. That's what it's meant to be. So that was fun. We got a new Jerry Ale coming up,
being brewed.
They're blowing through the most current iteration of the Scarlet Old World, so this time decided to go for a little bit more of an Irish influence because, you know, that's what you should do with the upcoming month.
Yeah.
With that, keeping all of the crystal malt out of it, all of the
Obviously.
color come, because, you know, why use crystal when you can actually have good taste in your beer?
Yeah.
Anyway, what do you use for color? Mellow malt in there to get some of that really deep, rich fruitiness, and then actually some chocolate for a little bit of roastiness, and that's about it.
And we will be dyeing this one green with food coloring as well, because that's Tim's favorite thing to do.
It is. It will be 100% green as long as you are colorblind.
Does that wrap up all our Genus Brewing news? We're ready to get into the meat and potatoes.
Yeah. We're.
When you guys get the meat and potatoes, there's a really cool call out from Martin.
Martin!
I just finished my certification for the brewer, both instructor and attendee. We're pretty impressed by your channel. Keep on doing great stuff. Awesome. Appreciate the shout out. Let's see what else is going on. Scott Crosby is decontaminating the brewery today after a mixed firm with Brett. Any advice other than heat, and more heat? Heat and closed systems. I mean, that's pretty important too.
Yeah.
But no, kill it with fire. And I personally, if you're all on stainless, I don't worry about things getting places because everything should be closed system pumped. You know, you should be an entirely closed system from your actual fermentation vessel back through your chiller because that's, you know, obviously where the heat stops. And so 2 ways to do that. First, if you're sanitizing the brew house, you can sanitize with a back flush through your fermenter, push that back through your chiller, or you can just send boiling hot water into your fermentation vessel first before you turn on the counterflow water in the chiller, and just make sure that everything in line is getting sanitized as well. Other than that, I mean, if you got porous material in your brew house, there's really no way to get rid of all of the bugs, so don't worry too much about it. And that's it. Yeah. Welcome in, Adam. Oh yeah, his packing is impeccable. Timing is impeccable. Words. Tim is getting coffee, so I can't sing the jingle. I can't sing it by myself. Maybe I can. He can sing it from afar. Tim, can you harmonize?
What?
High harmony.
Harmony?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. You were answering a couple questions. It seemed like a good opportunity to get a kofefe.
I just, expect you to, belt the falsetto out from the back.
I can.
Classic operetta style.
Yeah. I can't hear very well. I'm old.
We're getting old. Now it's time for the beer of the week. Beer of the week. Yeah. Always the best jingle in the world.
Went for the low harmony that time.
Low harmony, yeah.
See,
I don't know, there's a word for that. We're talking about a Kolsch today. We've talked about Kolsch before, but we've kind of got some fun things to go into with Kolsch. But we're talking about Kolsch because it's a fun base style. It's one of the light beers that should be a light lager, but actually it's an ale. That gives you a little bit of play in terms of some breadth of flavors. It can have a little fruitiness into it, but can also be pretty dang neutral and clean. Overall impression is a clean, crisp, delicately balanced beer, usually with a very subtle fruit and hop character. Subdued maltiness throughout leads into pleasant, well-attenuated, and refreshing finish. Freshness makes a huge difference with this beer, as the delicate character can fade quickly with age. Brilliant clarity is characteristic. Like I just said, it's the ale version of a light lager, and it's got some sort of play in terms of like malt bill, and we're going to get into with our topic number 2.
Yeah, and Kolsch is delicious. And, it does say the delicate character can fade quickly with age, but that's also kind of a conundrum because this beer should be lagered or cold-aged for a little bit as well to achieve that brilliant characteristic.
Yeah.
Appearance: very pale gold to light gold. Very clear. Authentic commercial versions are filtered to a brilliant clarity. Has a delicate white head that may not persist.
Yep. It's got a low overall body, so it's going to fade quickly. If we're getting into actual stats, we're talking final gravity down into the 1.007, which is very, very dry. There's not going to be a lot of fluff to this beer. It's going to hold carbonation very well because it doesn't have a lot of fluff.
Yeah, that's another key characteristic about that. You might get some really nice high building head on it. It usually doesn't last too long. Don't worry about too much on head retention for this beer. It's not as big of a deal, especially considering the Kolsch glasses that they give you, which is just that big, long cylinder.
Yep.
Which are very fun to drink Kolsch's out of. Aren't built to actually sustain that head either. This is supposed to be a super quaffable beer that you just chug a lot of.
Yeah, get your burst of all the flavor up front, and then 2 minutes later you got to order another. Aroma on this is going to be low to very low malt aroma with some grainy sweet characters. It's going to come from your base malt. Pleasant subtle fruit aroma from fermentation, apple, cherry, pear. That's going to be a yeast byproduct, but also can help you hide in, as we're going to talk about in our topic. Some hop character is acceptable, but not always present. Like I said, this can be light lager neutral. A low floral or spicy herbal hop aroma is optional, but not out of style. Again, you've got some play there, which is kind of fun. Some yeast strains may give slight winey or sulfury characters. I don't really like sulfur in Kolsch specifically because of how I like to build mine, but they're not necessarily a bad thing. They're a bad thing, so don't do it. Overall, the intensity of aromatics is fairly subtle, but generally balanced, clean, and fresh.
Yeah, again, to say that this is a very nice, light, true, crispy boy, but actually, with flavor and super, super, super quaffable.
Yeah.
There's a lot more play in Kolsch than people think there is, but it's still kind of a restrictive style. I mean, don't go so far on the hops that it's an IPK.
Yeah.
Even though those are incredibly delicious, and I do suggest you try one.
They are fun. Oliver Horold, Prost. Cheers, mate.
Prost. All right, so, and since we're on that now, German beer people always make fun of Kolsch. I would say that's because they aren't real German beer people, and they haven't had the right Kolsches.
Yeah.
Because some Kolsches are so incredible as a beer. Actually, White Bluffs makes an incredible Kolsch.
Yeah.
Chuck and that always does, because I'm going to sing their German beer praises. They're great. Fremont. Talk about a Kolsch that's a little bit outside of style. The Fremont Pride Kolsch is incredibly delicious.
That one's a chugger, though. That one's, if you compare that to Chuck and Nuts Kolsch. Chuck and Nuts Kolsch also a chugger, but it's got like kind of that subtle nuance to it.
Yeah.
Fremont's is like...
I think they use Mandarina Bavaria in it and gives you that extra little bit of citrusiness in it, and it's just, that...
Quaffable.
Wow.
What he's trying to say is that all the best German beers are made in America.
Nah, not at all. But you shouldn't make fun of Kolsch. There are a lot of people who brew it wrong, and it tastes like a light corn beer too. So we'll get into that. Flavor.
Before we get into that, let's while we're kind of rolling on comments, let's Adam Chumbly, Peter, did that red ale get to us yet? I don't know, did it?
Oh,
It's not in the fridge.
No.
doesn't look like it, as far as Matt can tell. Everybody singing along with the jingle in your household. That is a great thing.
And how everybody should be.
89.
So if it's anybody that's not Ledgeril 89, train your family.
You should train your family. I mean, my kid loves it, actually. Germans are jealous of all the ingredients they don't get to use. That actually is that's not a false statement. But they find ways around it.
Yeah.
And
like Cervomyces. By the way, for when I first got into, and this blew my mind, when I first got into like starting a homebrew supply store, the number of people that asked for Cervomyces because they thought it was the best yeast nutrient available was incredible. I think other stores around, not to name names, but other stores that were around trained people to buy Cervomyces as the best yeast nutrient. First of all, it's a piss poor yeast nutrient. Second of all, the only reason it exists is because of the German purity law.
And that's the way that they get around it, but it's also, they know their process so well. They're incredible brewers. That's pretty good. Riviera, what do you think of Chevalier malt? Absolutely brilliant. I love it. Think it is a little more biscuity Maris Otter. You still get some of those really good sweet aspects of the Maris Otter, but a little bit more biscuity. So I wouldn't use it for every single beer out there. But I absolutely love that malt as a base malt. Use it.
Yeah. All right, let's go into flavor before we get too off track.
Okay.
I think we're caught up-ish on the comments.
At least for a minute. Flavor. Soft, rounded palate comprised of a delicate flavor balance between soft yet attenuated malt and almost imperceptible fruity sweetness from fermentation, and a medium-low to medium bitterness with a delicate dryness and slight crispiness in the finish, but no harsh aftertaste. The malt tends to be grainy sweet, possibly with a very light bready or honey quality. That doesn't mean honey malt. The hop flavor is variable. That's really a fun thing about Kolsch's, and can range from low to moderately high. Most are medium-low to medium intensity and have a floral, spicy, or herbal character. May have a malty sweet impression at the start, but this is not required. No noticeable residual sweetness. May have a slight winey, minerally, or sulfur accent that accentuates the dryness and flavor balance. A slight wheat taste is rare, but not a fault. Otherwise, very clean.
Yeah, wheat is one of those things that can be used in Kolsch, and I've actually, because that's how I started brewing Kolsch's way back in my early days, I actually always used 20% wheat or close to 20% wheat in my Kolsch's because that's kind of the upper echelon of the style. And that is going to push that fluff factor probably beyond what you would normally need for it, but the final gravity up at 1.011 is kind of that upper echelon, and if you use 20% wheat, you can do that. Other than that, if you're using, this is a beer that can be done with just base malt, just your Pilsner malt, or even if you want a little less proteins, just a base 2-row is going to get the job done pretty well, and it's going to give you that light lager-esque kind of feel. So that's kind of where the spread is of how you can treat this beer base malt wise.
Yeah, and the flavor, like we talked about in there, there's a large range in Kolsch's to go for this. I know Peter loves to add a little bit of corn for the fruitiness in Kolsch's. I personally love a little bit of rice for that fluffiness in Kolsch's, flaked rice for that.
Yeah, and it gives like the perception of creaminess, which is kind of fun if you're adding any sort of hops.
Yeah, but keeping it very low, that should never really take over. You should just still be experiencing that really good, clean maltiness coming from just the base grain if you're adding anything else in. Low amounts.
It's a base malt dominated beer, honestly.
Yeah.
Mouthfeel, medium light to medium body. Most are medium light. Almost erring on that light side again. Not quite light lager-esque, but like its closest cousin. Medium to medium high carbonation, smooth and generally crisp and well attenuated. So one note on that is as you're getting into the high carbonation, that high carbonation is going to correlate with the lower final gravity. So if you're at 1.007, then you can definitely get that high carbonation, but that's designed to make it so that this beer is going to fluff up and then fall down. That's how you want this beer to be. You're going to get more brightness and effervescence on this with the high carbonation, and you don't want that head to start getting sticky and retain So if you're going to be highly carbonating it, we're talking getting close to 2.8 volumes, then you don't want to be using wheat, for example. You basically just want to be doing your base grain and doing your best to mash in a way that's going to make this thing attenuate out. Kurt Witt, thank you so much for the super chat. And for I think that was Kurt that sent us the Facebook comment this morning.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's what you said.
Yeah, thanks for being on, and we appreciate the super chat.
All right. So going in that, I also agree. I think the high carbonation also goes into the extreme drinkability of this beer. Mm-hmm. It really helps it stay on top of your palate and not get heavy and weighed down. It lets you experience a little bit of that malty sweetness without it, again, getting really heavy on your palate or sticking around for too long. Even if they fall down and you lose some carbonation, these still should just be supremely crushable beers. Comments, or shall we go into history? I like the comments on. Let's do both of these. Characterized in Germany as a top fermented lagered beer, using lagered as an action there in the cold storage of beer.
Yeah.
Each Köln brewery produces a beer of different character, which each interprets the Kolsch convention slightly differently. Allow for a range of variation with the style when judging. Note that drier versions may seem hoppier or more bitter than the IBU specifications might suggest. Due to its delicate flavor, Kolsch tends to have a relatively short shelf life. Older examples in imports can easily show some oxidation defects. Served in Köln in tall, narrow 200 ml glasses called a stange. Stange?
Stange.
Stange.
Minge.
Stange.
Is it minge or mange? Australian people, is it minge or mange? Minge?
For what?
For, like what they, you get it.
All right.
They get it.
They get it.
History. Cologne, Germany. Köln has a top fermenting brewery tradition since the Middle Ages. Talking about the stanges, by the way, the shape of that glass, people don't realize it actually dampens aroma and smell. So a Kolsch isn't necessarily meant to be served in this glass.
No. It still should not be served in a shaker pint because that's used for shaking cocktails and not for serving beer unless you severely disrespect your beer. And if you do, that's fine. That's your opinion, and you can live with the consequences of not fully experiencing the beer. What is the saying? Opportunity cost? Anyway.
Something like that.
But that is a beer. It's not really meant to have a lot of the head and aroma and stuff like that. Again, it's a beer that's really meant to just be drank fast.
It's like a bigger shot, and it is minge apparently. Yeah, so I got that right.
I saw that.
It's the Australian word for a pachina, but they use it very loosely. Loose pachinas.
I mean, it works. It works.
East Köln Brewery produces a different character. We're past that. It's the Middle Ages, but developed in a beer now known as a Kolsch in the late 1800s. Combat encroaching bottom fermented pale lagers. Yeah, darn those pale lagers. Darn them right to heck. Kolsch is an appellation product by the Kolsch Convention 1986 and is restricted to the 20 breweries in and around Köln. The convention, all the K's are getting me.
Yeah.
Simply defines the beer as light, highly attenuated, hop accentuated, I'm going to put that in quotes, clear top fermenting Vollbier. No idea what Vollbier means.
Yeah, Count Drungula. He calls chow mein, and always leads to sniggering. And yes, that is what it'll be referred to from now on because that is a great snack either way.
It's true.
Yeah.
Also, I don't think you can say sniggering.
Laughing lightly under my breath. That
Yes.
way, nobody can take it in any way.
I'm just
out of context.
I'm just afraid if someone cuts off the S.
Yeah, I know. I know.
You got that one clip. Now I taught everyone how to cancel us.
God damn it, Peter! Keep your mouth shut. Damn it. Anyway, the what it basically means, appellation protected by that is technically you can't call things Kolsch if you're not one of the Köln breweries around Cologne, Germany. Just like technically you can't make a Trappist beer if you're not a Trappist monastery. It's not champagne if it's not from Champagne, France.
It's not tequila if it's not from Kokomo or whatever.
Jalisco.
Yeah, Jalisco. Yeah, that one.
Technically, you're not mezcal if you're not from Oaxaca.
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 Yeah, Oaxaca.
Oaxaca.
That's weird.
Oaxaca.
I wouldn't know any of this if I didn't, combine with a Mexican restaurant.
Yeah. But that's still one of those things that, you're making a Kolsch. We still call it a Kolsch because that's also the style definition on it. But you should try out some of these other ones. They're pretty darn good.
Adam Chumbly, thank you so much for the super chat. I'd like to buy a beer for the person behind me in the Genus drive-thru. # pay it forward. Deal. First person that comes in, we're giving a free beer.
Done.
Matt, it doesn't count for you because we're going to give you free beer anyway.
Yeah. And then, all right. Characteristic ingredients. We onto that one? Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Traditional German hops, Hallertau, Tettnang, Spalt, Hersbrucker, German...
Rolls.
German pills or pale malt. Attenuative clean ale yeast, up to 20%. Wheat malt may be used, but it's quite rare in authentic versions. Current commercial practice is to warm ferment, cold condition for a short period of time, and serve young.
Yeah. It's kind of the cleaner version of a Keller beer, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
a properly lagered, like if a Keller beer was lagered for a little bit.
Well, I mean, Keller, you're still just, that's just young beer, so technically that would kind of be a Keller beer. Well, no, it's still not young anymore. I don't know. Anyway, the whole point of this is to get a very clean ferment on it, generally a little bit cooler than a lager, a little bit cooler than an ale temperature, on the lower side, but not into lager at all. You want a nice crispy fermentation, a little bit of the German fruitiness, which I always characterize as just a little bit of green apple skin. Some people don't like it. If you don't want to produce that, don't. I enjoy that in a lot of my German beers. And then having that clean fermentation and then the cold lagering time. That is a really key point for Kolsch, to get it crispy, to get it clean, to get it clear.
Yeah, and the cold lagering time also helps with getting a really good proper high carbonation level, which just helps carry the overall feel of the beer for people who are drinking it. Because if you shouldn't shake and bake a Kolsch, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
You don't want those big bubbles that are just going to not create head and then they're going to dissipate. It should have that lagering time that really lets that carbonation set in, and it should feel highly carbonated. You should get the acetic acid. It takes time for CO2 to isomerize into carbonic acid, and that's part of the flavor, the tingliness that you get off of a proper, almost lagery kind of beer. Let's go into some Kurt Witt questions, because after he super chatted it, I see he kind of had a couple follow-ups. I added blueberries in beer maker and the mash, and dried blueberries in waste bag. Using Kolsch kit as a base. After seeing you guys' video, I'm going to back flavor as well. Love your videos. Thank you so much for loving our videos.
Yeah.
And then your follow-up question on that was, so with the blueberries, is it no longer a Kolsch? If you're doing a Kolsch base, it's Kolsch.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime you add flavors, and this is, technically, if you want to get to the letter technical, since you brewed it somewhere that wasn't Cologne, Germany, no, it's not a Kolsch. But if you made a Kolsch, you made a Kolsch. That's the base flavor, and so adding any sort of flavors is still going to keep it a Kolsch. It's just a Kolsch with a variation. That's kind of how, in the brewing marketing world, every beer that's ever put out is described and titled. So yeah, it's still a Kolsch.
It's a blueberry Kolsch now.
Yep.
You'll get some purists trying to argue that you just made a fruited beer. Well, yeah, you did, but you fruited a Kolsch, so the most appropriate thing to call it is a blueberry Kolsch on that. And, if someone really wants to get a stink about it, they can sit on a duck.
Yep. A very, very sharp duck.
Pressure fermenting Kolsch instead of lagering. That is not going to do the same thing.
Nope.
The lagering is a different process than actually fermenting at lager pressures. The pressure fermenting will get you a closer flavor to cold fermentation, but it will not get you a close flavor to lagering.
Yeah.
Flavor. It said flavor too many times in that.
Flavor.
Anyway,
Flavor.
The lagering period, what that does is it really helps condition the beer. It helps the carbonic acid get into the beer and help it nice, bright, and sparkle. It helps all the yeast crash out and clarify. It helps big, sharp flavors mellow out and come back together into the beer. and it's not something you're going to get from pressure fermentation, because that's on the fermentation side, not the conditioning side. If you can't cooler ferment, pressure ferment will definitely help out on that. In all actuality, though, on Kolsch's, my opinion, if you have the ability to do it, open ferment is going to be way better.
Yeah.
You're going to get better flavors coming off of it, and it's also going to be cleaner and crispier, because this beer will capture off flavors in a pressure ferment if you let it.
Yeah, kind of correlated question that kind of goes into a way deeper topic is Adam Chumbley's question. Dumb question. Do you spund when lagering? Curious how the Kolsch gets CO2 naturally when lagered. Kolsch gets CO2 naturally when lagered by a process called Crowsinning, which is different than spunding. So spunding, kind of same effect. You can still open ferment and then spund depending on your system, which will help get some natural carbonation in there and is nice, but still not truly proper. It honestly is going to taste better or easier to get with an addition of unnatural CO2, so CO2 from a tank, in that lagering process. If you want that natural CO2 flavor, spunding can get you close, but you should still have some supplementary CO2 coming in to kind of help get that what's it called, carbonic acid. And if you wanted to be a true old world style German brewery, then there's a process called Crowsinning, which basically means if you're making the same beer consecutive times, you can take currently fermenting wort with active yeast and a measured amount of remaining sugar in there, and you can add that into your clean and finished beer, and that is how they get the exact amount of CO2 that they want in their beer, and then they let it lager out. So
Curious how the Kolsch gets CO2 naturally when lagered? That's the second part of Adam Chumbley's question.
Yeah, and that's the Crowsinning.
That's the Crowsinning.
Yeah.
Crowsinning, I mean,
still
if you
natural,
really want to keg condition it on there, condition it with a lager yeast, or force CO2 it. That's how a lot of people do it now. Should you carb the keg before lagering or after? From Tim Harstead.
That's a good question.
Traditionally, it's done during the lagering process. If you don't have the ability to do that whole complicated thing, you can carb it before or afterwards. Generally, I kind of suggest, if you're doing forced carb, I kind of suggest a mix. Cold age it for a second, then throw some CO2 on it just to get everything to come together.
To kind of hash out flavor-wise what you're getting in the differences between these, if you're adding CO2 unnaturally, then overall the final product will be more acidic. You'll have that carbonic acid at a higher degree. You're always going to have carbonic acid in there, but it'll be a higher degree of carbonic acid because it's coming from a CO2 source that's outside of the beer already, so it's not taking anything away from the currently fermenting beer. And if you carbonate with natural carbonation, you'll have a slightly less acidic flavor. So it's a small difference, but it's one of those, like, is it going to be a little bit more bright and poppy, or is it going to be a little bit more round and sweet?
Yeah.
And they're all within the style.
Yeah. Let's see, where are we going on that? Pamela Hakala, I think you were next on to it. One more thing I have to say about the lagering in there, it's a conditioning time. The way I always explain conditioning is kind of like making chili. The first day you make it, it's pretty darn tasty, but then the second day when all the flavors have come together, it's so much better. And that's the point of conditioning and also this lagering, is to get all of those flavors to come together and make it taste better. So while a lot of these things say that this beer should be served fresh and relatively young, that's fresh and relatively young to package date, not necessarily brew date. You need to give it enough time to come into its own in that lagering period to make it taste beautiful, nice, and crispy.
This is a lagered beer, that's the defining thing between this and a Keller beer.
Yeah, and then along with that, if you're using a German ale yeast especially, but any type of German yeast, they're super powdery. You know you're done when it drops clear, because those suckers just don't like to drop clear.
Yeah.
And when they drop clear, you're probably done aging it. All right, Pamela.
That's a really good natural timer, actually. That's
it
a
really
good way to
is.
put it.
Pamela Hakala, do commercial breweries in the U.S. use open fermentation? There are bunches and bunches of them do. We have done it a couple of times. The biggest one that I know of on the most commercial scale is Sierra Nevada. And I think actually their pale ale might all be open fermentation on that. They have gigantic gigantic Tadcaster squares that they ferment a lot of their beer in. Super clean rooms. If you get a chance, go see it. Somebody already answered that Anchor Brewing does. They do as well.
For some of their beers. I mean, Anchor's Brewing, they have a really, really fun and interesting brewery to go watch because they're still one of the only breweries in the world that has an actual cool ship on their roof. But they have it plumbed into an open fermenter that's below that, and so it's kind of like a leveled brewery. That is for specific beers that they do, though, and so they have another off-site facility where they do a lot of their commercial products in a completely different, definitely not open system, too.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh,
Yeah.
Come to
Yeah,
Spokane and
they
check
did.
out Iron Goat. But they don't have a cool vertical gravity-filled, plumbed,
Open fermenter.
room that's just for beer below it.
Yeah. There's
That,
nice.
Well, I'm gonna have to go check it
there
out.
we go.
That'd be
Haven't
a
been
cool.
there in
That'd be a
long
cool
time.
thing to do construct a building based
Going
on the
there
beer you're
later
making.
today?
Maybe. I mean, because
After
we'll be
Steel Barrel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, yes, by the way, I thought I responded to you. Then you didn't come while I was still there.
I
the
put it for
thing
late.
you had.
I scheduled that out for later, just in case, anyways. But
Yeah, we'll get it done. Anyway, there are bunches of them out there. I know Crux does some on that. Crux actually does some really cool things with their cool ship and open fermentation, where they have a mobile one that they wheel somewhere in Oregon, park it out, infect it, let it ferment a bit, and bring it back. It's awesome.
did you already read KO Brewing's comment?
No. Hey, KL, nice. Crux is.
They do a good
I love
job.
Crux so much. Everything that Larry Seedor does with barrels is magic. And if you,
it's not the Love Potion. What's the one that they do?
no, Love Potion is phenomenal. But Freak Cake,
Yeah, Free Cake is really
Freak
good.
Cake is one of my favorites. I buy one of those a year, pretty much. Well, I try to buy a case a year, but it happens. I had my bachelor party in Bend actually.
Oh,
That was
nice.
pretty great. 4 days
good way to
riding
do
your
it.
bikes around on Bend.
Why did Tim and I not know each other earlier?
Right? Well,
By the way, Tim and I, when we first met, that's one of those matches that we got along right away. It was fun.
yeah, it was really fun. But there's tons of them out there. I severely encourage you to try it. It's not as dangerous as it seems, and it will create some really fun beers. All right. Anyway, we got so far off there.
We're done with the beer of the week. It's just how quickly do we want to get into the topic?
Well, we're answering some good questions. I like this.
It's a good conversation. It really is. Adam Chumbley had chili last night, so that rang a bell for him.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna be so good a week later.
Stephen
It
Studemeyer, this is actually a great way to do it, to get some really cool flavors out of a Hefeweizen. F knew now that you mentioned open fermentation, he craves a Hefeweizen, and that is a great, perfect beer to start with an open fermentation.
Yeah.
Super aggressive. And one of the deals about open fermentation, too, I should throw this in here, you do need to get it high enough that the Crowsin is going to push up and over the side, and you want that to happen because it's going to carry some proteins and trub and some not as good stuff up on the top of the Crowsin and push it out of the beer, so you actually get a better tasting fermentation most of the time. But when you do it, do not be afraid to build it all the way up and let this sucker spill out everywhere.
Yeah.
And Hefeweizen is cool for that.
Stefan Stademeyer, this is the Munich way. Heart.
Yes. Yeah. Are you in Germany? You feel like you are. And if
his
you are,
name-
you need to send us like
All
way
the
more beer because
I'm jealous because
yes.
obviously America took a lot of its brewing techniques from Germany, like 30 plus years ago or whatever, and then
Yeah.
recently Germany's starting to take back some techniques from America too, and so I would love to see the kind of the other end of that coin. Like obviously the traditional beers from Germany, I definitely want to try, but also the new world beers that are being brewed in Germany, taking some American influence with like really big aggressive hops. I would love to try some of those.
Oh, that's actually, I mean, one of the reasons that we had Mandrina Bavaria. That was pretty much a breeding response into the new big alpha acid American hops, as well as New Zealand, Australian. And I love Mandrina. Hallertau Blanc was another part of that breeding program to get more fruity flavors coming out of some of these German hops, and they're absolutely beautiful.
Stefan says we should
Hallertau
come and visit. When we get the time and money, we will, for sure.
Yeah, 100. I mean,
Give us a year.
Yes.
I don't know if we'll have time this summer, but next summer, and also we got to save up a little money, but yeah.
Yeah. This summer I definitely don't. I got to take my kid to Disney World, which is probably going to be just as great for me because now I get to go on all the little kid rides. I will tell you what, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, probably my favorite ride in Disney all over. Yeah, I mean, seriously, it is. I know it's a dumb ride, but I absolutely love it. My mom and I went on it every time. All right, enough about that. So, yes, send us beer from Germany, please. That is very, very delicious. Literal. On a homebrew scale, I have seen a lot of forums say that their Kolsch fermentations get stuck around 1.020. Thoughts? That can actually happen, especially since they're generally a little bit cooler fermented. It's a little bit harder to take care of things. I would say yeast nutrients will really help you out in the beginning, especially yeast energizer. Energizers don't quite do what you think they do. While they keep the yeast up and fermenting, what they're meant to do is actually plane out the fermentation line. So instead of getting fermentation spikes, you get a lot smoother graph and get away from stuck fermentations. As well as a proper pitch and doing a yeast starter.
Yes. Troy Fenn, thank you so much for the super chat. How do you guys keep your all-in-ones, Anvil Foundry, for example, from scorching at the bottom and giving air readings whilst brewing hazies? That's actually a really good question. Basically, a lot of that comes down to the actual recirculation process. So we make sure that the grain bed is filtering out as much of the proteins as possible. Things like using rice hulls are going to help a ton, because then you can do a lot of recirculation very, very smoothly and make sure it's actually recirculating through the grain bed, and the grain bed will start picking up all those proteins. And this is before you're doing any sort of a mash ramping, so you don't have the heat going while you're recirculating in your mash in step. But yeah, that recirculation is probably the best. If you wanted to really get into it, you could do the enzymes that we use, the protease enzymes, proteolytic enzymes, like Viscobuster, and the mash enzymes like OptiMash.
Prothean enzymes?
Promethean?
Prothean? Yeah, let's see if anyone gets it.
I don't.
It's all right. Funky Brewer just had KBS for the first time recently. So amazing. Yes, it is. Kentucky Breakfast Stout from Founders Brewing Company. Seek yourself out Canadian Breakfast Stout. I am of the opinion it's a little bit better, but I love maple. So
they did the Japanese breakfast stout too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well,
With a hiso whatever.
Hikasuri or
I want to say Hisaka, but that's because
that's a yeah, definitely Hikasa. That okay. When we reach a 17% barley wine, then it's going to be Hisoka.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, yeah, they're super delicious. That is awesome. Let's see, where are we at right now? I like a lot of this.
There's so many good questions. Like I don't even know if we're going to get to the topic. But they're really good questions. So. Yeah. You guys let us know. Were you enjoying the conversation right now?
Oh, this is kind of a thing on there. Pamela Hakala, are you telling me that my exploded DIPA double IPA had Crowsin? Half my war ended up on the floor during fermentation.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. I mean, actually, that's one of the things. That's a cool thing for IPAs. Thanks for bringing that up. I mean, I know you were throwing a point out there, but IPAs are great for open fermentations because you have all that loose hot material in there. The Crowsin will actually bring it up and dump it out, so you aren't getting as many green grassy flavors in it. That is a cool beer style to do an open fermentation.
It's counterintuitive too, because a lot of times you think about volatilizing the aromatics, but a lot of the aromatics that you want in there, especially for a double IPA if it's American West Coast style, that you're still going to get everything you want in the actual beer itself, like all those dank big resinous notes staying in there. You know what I mean, subtle fruity hop notes might go out, but that's not a big deal. Like you're still getting everything else you want.
But that's something you can also add into the back end on dry hop and recapture those probably in a better, brighter way as well. One
of my best IPAs that I ever did was a Belma Citra open fermentation hop, and it ended up being like just this, very, very subtle, fruit note, but with that strong citrus kind of back to it, and it worked out pretty well. It was an open ferment, and then I spunded it, but yeah, it worked out really well.
All right, Jimmy J, New Zealand hops at the standard Kolsch hop rates are great as well. I bet South African would be good ones, but I haven't used any yet. You need to stay out of our heads, and that's going to be topic number 1 once we get to it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Ledgerl said recirculate Stefan Studemeyer. Let's see if Europe is still standing and brewing next year. Okay.
Thanks, Putin.
Yeah, right.
That's Putin it lightly.
I have also seen a great many people wanting to rename some beer styles to Ukrainian Imperial Stout. Ukrainian Imperial Stout. And I really don't give a shit about politics. We're not going to get into it anywhere on the show, but I think that is absolutely hilarious and one of just one of the most fun FUs that brewers can do. I'm like, yeah, let's take a centuries-old style and just rename it because we don't like your face.
I love that.
Oh, man. All right.
I'm not for making a Ukrainian Imperial Stout.
that'd be fun. I think we could probably, as brewers, we could do better and probably pull up a traditional historical style from them. But I also just love the fact to be like, yeah, never mind. It's no longer RIS. It's
UIS.
UIS.
Yeah, UIS.
Yes. UIS. I like the name of that way better anyway. Let's see. How do I test new hops in a non-hoppy beer? Hey, just hang on for a second. We'll get into that in topic number 1.
A second, or people stop asking questions so rapidly.
Right. Oh man, chocolate strawberry Danish stout. That sounds delicious. Fruitcake beer sounds great. Fruitcake beer. All right. Sorry, I'm gonna get onto this because we talked about Crux Nocturne. Who did that? Patrick Sandy. If you can get your hands on the beer called Freak Cake from Crux Brewing Company, that is literally a fruitcake beer that they have also, it's imperial, then they've aged it in bourbon barrels and soured it a little bit, and that is literally one of my favorite beers in existence. It is incredible.
It hits
do
all
a
the points.
fruitcake beer.
Yeah.
Do it. Also get a hold of that beer. All right.
Adam Chumley, his Christmas ale was essentially a fruitcake beer, used winter ale base and added mulling spices and chopped dried fruit soaked in rum. That was delicious.
That was a delicious
And
beer.
yes, both of us and the guy behind the computer, our man in the chair,
Man in the chair.
our what's his name? Our Ned.
Yeah, that's why I said he's not going to turn into a hobgoblin.
Yeah, well, he might.
Yeah. Although technically Ned was never the hobgoblin, he was just being mind controlled. And then they murdered him on the next panel and never spoke of him again. Oh shit! Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Anyway,
there's always another universe. So if Matt gets murdered, we can find him in another universe and bring him in.
Actually, if you really go into the comics, the guy in the chair, the Ned, the comic book character that he's more based off of, is the roommate guy. I forget his name from Miles Morales. That almost like word for word what he does, that's closer to what Ned is doing. So he probably won't be the Hobgoblin. But honestly, that was one of my favorite Spider-Man villains, and it'd be really cool to see him on the big screen.
Ledger 89, Ukrainian brewery switched to brewing Molotovs. I saw that.
It was amazing. Also just amazing. Slight hint of petrol.
Yeah.
a little solventy. There was a
little
high alcohol burn when I...
Oh, man.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's get into our topic number 1, how to test out new hops in light beer. This goes right along with Kolsch, because Kolsch, being a light beer, being light, delicate, crispy, but still having the tolerance to stand up to a lot of hopping rates, is a perfect beer to use to experiment with new hops.
Yeah, it's really fun because there is that kind of play in terms of how clean and crisp you want to make it and how a little bit fruity you can make it. And like I said before, it allows for some fruitiness that they expect to naturally come from using a German yeast. But if you use a super neutral yeast, you can also kind of get that same play with using New World hops. And so first of all, let's talk about hops that kind of really, really lean well into this. And I think Jimmy already mentioned it, right? That was Jimmy that put in the New Zealand comment.
The New Zealand comment, yeah, especially a lot of, even the high alpha acid, but a lot of the New Zealand ones are so low in oil content, they work really well for this. Vic's Secret, you can see at 22% AA sometimes, but oh my god, it's such low oil contents, low aggressiveness, that it goes beautiful in Kolsch.
Yeah. So first, let's kind of break down when and why you'd be using this. And so something like Vic's Secret would be an easier way to get all the flavor off of it as a dry hop, because you're not going to get, you're not going to risk the IBU, the actual IBU difference. It's going to put this out of style. So as a dry hop, it's going to work really, really well, or as a lower temperature Whirlpool edition, so you can get all that flavor in without risking getting that high. So you don't want to risk that. You don't want to risk it being an IPA, obviously, or an IPK. as we'll call it.
As
We'll
we'll
an
call
IPK.
it.
Yeah.
We invented that style. We did actually a couple of years ago, like 2 years ago.
I think we had an IPK out before anybody else.
We did. It was incredible. Before the shutdown, and it was absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Actually.
But there are a lot of fun, like lower IBU styles that you can use late edition. You can use like a normal hopping rate as a Kolsch, and a lot of those are the New Zealand, like the Rakaus, the Waimeas, the Wakatus, the Motuekas, like things like that.
Waiiti.
Waiiti. So in all those, you've got distinct lime flavors or distinct lemon flavors. Sometimes a little bit of coconut. You've got very, very specific orange tangerine notes that are going to come out of those, and you can use them because a lot of those are triploids, which means they're usually Saaz derivatives. They're descendants of Saaz hops. And if they're not Saaz, they're probably descendants of Hallertau. Specifically, that's going to be for Mandarina Bavaria and Hallertau Blanc. But they're going to have those distinct flavors that make that really, really fun and push out the subtle fruity note that still definitely fits in that style guideline for a Kolsch. And if you're trying to push these aromatics, I think Kolsch is a really good style because of that high CO2, that high volumes of CO2 that you can have carbonation level, because that high carbonation is going to create that froth, that foam when you pour it into a glass. It's going to immediately shoot into your nostrils, give you like a big waft of, yeah. And then because it's a beer that you're supposed to chug, you don't have to let it sit there. So it's not like an IPA where you want, some head retention and some foam to kind of stay in the glass, and you have this glass. This is like a hit you with really fun flavors, and then you chug it down, and then you're ready for the next one.
And to go along with that, Kolsch is an area that you can play around with the hopping schedule. You can get a lot more bitterness out of it, or bitter additions out of your hops that Kolsch can readily accept and show you the flavor of what's going to happen there. You can add it in a lot more in the late end to preserve a lot of those light fruity flavors, and it can show you what's going to happen in Whirlpool and still accept all of those flavors. 1 second on that. Nocturnal Brewer had a question on where we get Visco, but I'm trying to say two things at once. Visco Buster and OptiMash, because he can't find them. More Beer, actually, morebeer.com will have Gluca Buster. What's their version of Opti?
I don't know if they have a version of OptiMash yet. They have amylase enzymes.
Yeah.
That are not the full enzyme spread that OptiMash has. Glucobuster is Viscobuster.
Is Viscobuster, though.
So that one's taken care of. They have amylase enzymes. Amylex 4T is one that you can find on Amazon. That's very, very close to OptiMash.
I thought we had the other little vial of the Cellar Science. What's that other one?
It's the Clarity Firm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we got the Clarity Firm substitute from Cellar Science, too.
They have Cellar Science Brutzyme. That's far more than you will ever need as a home brewer, and far more aggressive than you need as a home brewer. So don't go into that one unless you're truly trying to make brute beers.
Yeah.
But the Glucobuster will be there, and get an amylase enzyme, and away you go.
Yeah, that's the closest you can get in the homebrew scale that we know of, at least.
Yeah. All right. So, Glucobuster, beta-glucanase, yes, it is. And Cerevisi asked that question. Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Also going into the hop rates on that, don't be afraid to use different hops. Hops that you normally wouldn't think about using in Kolsch's because they can make really delicious things. One of my we're jumping right back into topic one. One of my favorite hops to use in a Kolsch is actually Mount Hood. I absolutely love the way that comes out. But one of my favorite Kolsch's that we ever did is we hopped one with Sriracha Ace.
Oh, yeah.
We did a lot of that in the beginning, and the herb garden that it gave off was just absolutely incredible.
That was way more dilly than I thought it would be, but it was like very distinct, like it wasn't like non-beer dill. It was like wow, that's like very herb.
It was herb garden. I mean, you could taste tarragon in there. You could taste dill. You could taste the whole darn garden. It was amazing. Great beer to just drink and quaff by itself, but that was, in my opinion, the absolute best beer I've ever had to pair up with food, just because it adapted its herb profile to everything that you ate. It was absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Let's see. We used a hop in our Genus Stone Light beer. Experimental. If you can get a hold of it, it's pretty darn awesome.
We've got 11 pounds of it.
No, we don't have the Horts.
Didn't we get? Did I buy? I bought a giant bag of that, right?
I don't know. If you did, I'll be excited. New Zealand Hort, Hort. It's either I think it's 9909 or 9099. It's 9909.
And it does hear a who.
It does hear a who.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. But you used it in the light beer. It gives you all of those really good New Zealand subtle fruity flavors, but there's also, the only way I can describe it is like sun-warmed hay flavor coming out of it. Super perfect for a Kolsch. But that's why we're talking about it. This is a great way to test out new hops you haven't used is in a beer like this. So, let's see. I think there were a couple of good questions in there. Greg H., I intended to brew a Scottish heavy, base Golden Promise, Bob's Red Mill corn grits. Cook the grits before adding the mash. Usually aim for 70% efficiency. Got 87 for this batch. Ideas.
You have no idea what your grits sugar content is.
Yeah.
I have no idea what your grits sugar content is.
And also the efficiency on there. Corn generally has a lot easier sugars to get a hold of and attack by all the
they're
enzymes
they're
in
dissolvable.
there.
Yeah, sugars from corn are like ready to be soaked into your hot water.
So that's probably where you got a lot better efficiency out of that. Being grits, they were probably a little bit more chunky, so you probably got better lagerability too. So, all right. For testing higher bitterness hops out, what IBU range would you aim for to get the flavor, aroma, and bitterness capability without making it overwhelmingly bitter? Bye!
Bye, Matt.
Matt's leaving. Matt's going to play D&D.
Send us pictures.
Definitely.
Also,
What are you playing?
I'm a level 17 Water Genasi Life Cleric.
Damn,
Okay,
you've been playing
all
for a
right.
We
minute.
actually transitioned this game from 4E to 5E when we all died.
All right.
right.
All right.
So, yeah, 10-ish years I've been a part of the group, so.
There you go.
Level 17.
like it.
That's a solid Dungeons and Dragons player.
That's a solid Dungeons and Dragons player.
So for the higher bitterness hops out, what range would you aim for to get flavor, aroma, and bitterness capability without making it overwhelmingly bitter? So here's how I play getting maximum flavor out of hops that I don't want to add a lot of bitterness to my beer. I really go under 180 degrees. Under 180 degrees, you're far enough down that the isoalpha acids won't isomerize, and so they won't be soluble in beer. So you will mix a lot of the solubility of the things that are going to make it overly bitter. You'll still get some even at 180, but it's going to be very, very slow. So a 20-minute lid on. We should probably take a step back and do kind of like an overview of what we're talking about for people who are kind of just catching on, because I know we can be very, very ADD with a lot of this stuff. But if we're experimenting with different styles of beers, if we want to play with new hops or hops that we want to test out in a really fun light beer like a Kolsch, then we really have to balance how we're going to soak up all that flavor from the hops to know what the hop tastes like without overpowering the bitterness. Because we're putting this in a light beer, we're putting this in a beer that doesn't want to scream IPA, it doesn't want to be a pale ale even, it is a light lager style beer. So we really want to maximize that flavor, and dry hopping is the obvious way, because dry hopping, if you can do it correctly and you can do it low dissolved oxygen, you have a zero oxygen method for dry hopping your beer, then that's an easy way to get aromatics off of that. But not all aromatics come off at room temperature. Not all aromatics are 100% soluble by alcohol, and this is a low alcohol beer, and so alcohol solubility isn't going to increase a lot in a Kolsch like it would in, let's say, a double IPA, where you've got 10% alcohol, and the 10% alcohol is going to be a very, very good solvent for some of the aromatic components. This is also a beer where, because of how you are going to structure the fermentation, that you're not going to get biotransformation off of. You don't want to rely on biotransformation. You want to rely on usually cold side dry hopping. So you have the beer finish, and then you have a low oxygen way of adding a dry hop to this if you want to pump it up with a certain hop. But if you're going to do any sort of like Whirlpool additions or hop stand additions into the style, you don't want to be going a ton of hops, and you want to get kind of the subtle nuances of the hop that you're using. 180 degrees is if you have let's say a Vic Secret, where the alpha acids are very high. 140 degrees is another temperature that I like to use, and the difference between those two is at the 180 degrees, anything that's going to be tropical, stone fruit, kind of I kind of categorize that as all the fruitier fruits. They come out really well at 180 degrees. If you're aiming for the hop character that's going to come out of these hops, that's going to be citrus, your lemons, your limes, 140 degrees is the easiest way to do that as a hop stand. And again, in terms of total amounts that you're using at either of these hop stands isn't hazy levels. So you're not doing, 4 ounces at each hop stand. You're doing like 1 or 2 ounces at each hop stand. And you want to make sure that all of the hop material is somehow filtered out during fermentation. So you do not want hop material sitting in this, or else the grassy bite from the actual plant matter itself is going to be overwhelming, and it's not going to be a well-balanced beer at that point.
Which question were you answering?
I started by answering Ledgerl 89's question, but then I stepped back and wanted to do a 30-foot view just to kind of really sum up. By the way, if anyone can timestamp, comment whatever I just said, I will pin it to the top so that people that actually click on this video and want to know what we're talking about, they can see it and they can click on that timestamp and all that. We don't know how to timestamp. Fun fact, we're not really actually good at YouTube. We just kind of are on here a lot.
That's right. I went for coffee, so I missed that part. So just making sure.
Yeah, I did the 30-foot view of like actually what the topic is. When we're talking about, we got high alpha hops, we got low alpha hops. Why are we using them? We talked a little bit. You mentioned up before when you're using like a lot of the New Zealand derivatives that are like the low alphas, like how we use those late boil, like a normal Hallertau, but you're substituting a fun hop. And so I was talking about Ledgerl's comment, which was if you're using a high alpha hop, how do you not make it an IPA, basically?
Yeah, which is great on there. All right.
Now we're good. That's pretty much the topic is.
Is that?
Let's cover some questions. Let's talk to the
Empire Wagon has a good one. Isn't that the point of a smash beer, is to test out new hops and see what they do for your beer? That was the original point for a smash beer. The way that people expect smash beers to come out now, not exactly. Most people, most drinkers, when they're going into a tap room, when they see a smash, when they're expecting a smash, they're expecting a pale ale and an IPA.
Yeah.
And there are a ton of flavors and hops that can be hidden by those super aggressive flavors in those types of beers, along with, most of the time, you're not doing a base 2-row on that. You're doing a little more fun base malt, which again can hide some of those light flavors. Testing out these hops and doing more of a smash type or a single hopped Kolsch with it will allow the light, delicate flavors of the hops to come out. And then you can experience everything in it. Not to say that a smash isn't a great way to do it, especially, I mean, you're just like, hey, I want to try the new Elixir hops in an IPA, hit it with a smash and away you go. If you want to experience all of the subtleties that Elixir has to offer to see if you want to use it maybe in like a Pilsner, or maybe if it would go well in a Saison or a Bière de Garde or something like that, doing it in a lighter beer like a Kolsch is a lot better way to do it, because you can start to pick out subtlety in the hops, more so than what smash is to beer drinkers today.
Yeah, another way to put it is what flavors are you going to be hit over the head with, which if you're using any hop, I don't care what the hop is, just the raw amount of hop material, the plantiness in hops, if you're doing it in IPA doses in a smash beer like you would normally a smash beer, that flavor alone is going to overpower a lot of the subtlety. So it's like saying, if you want to hear a nice acoustic set, right, in music, if you're listening to a nice acoustic set, do you want to hear it in the same room as a really, really powerful metal set where you've got just like rock bands playing really loud, or you want to hear it in a quiet room? What we're talking about is hearing that acoustic set in a quiet room, where it's like, hey, if I want to be listening to this, if I want to actually like dig into the flavor and the smell, then I can find all these flavors. But I don't need to be, if you're in the metal set room, then you're going to hear the metal set no matter what you're doing. If you're in the acoustic set room, you can be talking to somebody and not hearing it, but then when you search, you can hear the acoustic set. You can smell and taste these hops. That's what this Kolsch style is going to do for you. You do have to search for you have to search for it. You got to be tasting beer to taste beer. But there's a lot of fun flavors, and they're really important.
Actually, Steph, you are fishing for bingo card on there. Stefan Studemeyer wants us to mention Halcyon for bingo card. But I'm going to mention it here because that is something that, is a great thing to be used for a smash beer. But if you're using Halcyon for a smash beer and then coming back around and using a nice lighter delicate hop to go along with that, there are some subtleties that you're going to miss out on, because Halcyon is so big, puffy, and sweet. If you were missing, Barber Rouge is actually one of those. If we load that up to pale ale standards, there is some really light, delicate fineness, very light, delicate floralness that doesn't come out of it that you will get if you're using it more into the Kolsch realm. Not to say that you shouldn't be using smash beers to test out your hops, because you definitely should. It's just to mention that when most people think about smash beers these days, they're thinking about smash being a pale ale or an IPA, and generally those are so big and aggressive. There are things that you can miss within trying to test that hop, because there's so much noise. There's some parts of it that you may miss in there, where, like Peter said, in the Kolsch, in the acoustic room, where it's a nice little low soft, you may be able to pick them out a little bit better, and the hop may have a wider range than you think.
Yeah. Jimmy's got a really good question. Any recommendations for yeast to use if we're trying to pick this out? And I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for this, because the yeast that I would actually use for a Kolsch, if I'm trying to test out new hops, is a lager yeast technically, although now we figured out it's a hybrid yeast. It's 3470, so the fine Stefan lager strain. Fermented at like 62 to 65, somewhere in that range. But although technically a lager yeast, it ferments a lot like an ale flavor-wise at that range. It's got some subtle fruitiness that kind of leans into a lot of this. It pushes forward malt flavors. If I didn't tell you it wasn't German ale, then you wouldn't know, if I'm being 100% honest, except for the fact that it will clarify really, really quickly. So German ale is very powdery. It won't clarify. German ale fermented low and 3470 fermented high actually taste very, very similar, but the German ale will not flock and the 3470 will flock.
Yeah. Jimmy J, on the flip side, any preferences on a test recipe for new yeast? Got a handful of different quakes to try out. That's a lot more complicated, and that might be something we put into another video for it, because the yeast will also depend on fermentation pathways through the different malts, protein structures, sugars and stuff that you get from all your malts, and stuff that you get from your hops. That's a little bit more complicated for this, but basically, Kolsch is a decent way to do that as well, but you're going to be missing some things. There's some yeast that love to chomp on adjuncts, that love to chomp on proteins. So temperature is another different one. That's a whole different monster.
It's exponential variables. For new yeast, it's exponential variables, because you've got how the yeast handles hops, you've got temperature, and then you've got alcohol tolerance. So that's like, you know, if you put everything in three ranges, like temperature wise, you say low end of the range, middle of the range, high end of the range on the temperature for the new yeast. Then you've got 0 hops, medium hops, or low hops, medium hops, high hops. And then you've got low alcohol, medium alcohol, high alcohol. All of a sudden, that's 27 beers you got to make just to test out the new yeast. So
yeah, I would say feel what you want to do with that yeast, what you think it's best for, and then try it out in that way. But it could be one of those things that you have a quake that when you ferment it really low, or actually, let's take Hornadal for example, because I know it can do this. If you ferment it at a low temperature, it can come out extremely clean, and in a Kolsch that may be really good. When you do it at a high temperature, it may come across extremely fruity and could overpower the Kolsch entirely. So the best beer to test out new yeast is one that you know by heart, and that you know exactly the changes in the flavors are changed because of that yeast.
Yeah.
All right.
Ledger 89, milkshake sour oyster IPK. Sounds fantastic. Let's do it.
Yeah. I saw a good one up here. Funky Brewer, a process for back sweetening beer. Skabub with CO2, make the addition. Generally, we will boil, a lot of time when we're back sweetening, we're using monk fruit because it's unfermentable. We will take some of that, boil it in a small amount of water until it dissolves and becomes sanitary. Then take that hot water and infuse it straight into our beer and then skabub it through. The hot water isn't going to kill off your yeast or do anything like that, but it is going to kill anything that it comes in contact with all the way into your beer. All right.
And if you're a metal band playing in the same room as the acoustic set, then you've probably been overserved.
More than likely. More than likely. That, or you're on MTV's Untapped, and that could be really good. Or Unplugged? Unplugged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unplugged. Ever use Ariana hops? Yes, we have.
Ariana is a really fun hop to use, and actually this kind of goes back into what we were talking about earlier with Germans being influenced by American brewing. Ariana is one of those German hops. It was bred for fruitiness, and it goes really great in IPAs. We have a brewery here in town, No Drought Brewing Company, that uses it for their German IPA, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it could be used all over the place. It's delicate enough to be used in light beer, heavy enough to be used in IPAs, but definitely I think it would be a hop you want to showcase more than have in the background.
Yeah. Micatha, is it okay to start chilling right after flame out when not adding Whirlpool hops? Yeah, you want to start chilling immediately, even when adding Whirlpool hops. So if you're doing flame out, if you have an immersion chiller, start chilling immediately at flame out. Get that temperature to drop below, especially for IPAs, especially for anything that you're trying to do hops with. But all the time, try to start chilling immediately after that. And if you're doing a Whirlpool hop, then get your wort chilled down to your 200, your 190, your 180, whatever you're aiming for, and then stop your chiller, add your hops, put a lid on to kind of keep the aromatics in there, and then continue chilling after the time is there. But start chilling immediately. Patrick Sandy, propane burner recommendations. Look up KAB4 and KAB6. Those are going to be the cheapest, sturdiest, and most powerful. If you want the actual cheapest, SP10.
Now, for layman's terms on that, you basically want a burner that's going to give you a high BTU output, but is going to be very evenly heated. Not a jet burner, because that's going to create scorching. You want it to be
burners.
As distributed and even heat as possible, but still get high BTUs coming out of it. That way you can boil quickly.
Yep. Hendrik Potgeider. A single pack of beer finding did not clear up my beer. Will a second pack overdo it, or should I go ahead and give it a try? It's Munich lager, so it's got to be clear. Depends on what you use. So we always say that super clear or a combination of Biofine and Kieselsaal, or Kitasan and Kieselsaal, Kieselsaal and Kitasan. Biofine is the same as Kieselsaal, and then Kitasan is the opposite polarity. So if you haven't gotten it from one polarity, then adding the other polarity is going to be what helps clarify your beer. The reason being, proteins that are causing haze actually switch polarities at a certain pH. So depending on your beer's pH, one clarifier could grab them all, or you need both clarifiers to grab them all and drop them down, depending on your beer's pH.
This is a Munich lager, so it's got to be clear. The rest of that, somebody actually, Eric V00, if you don't need it ready, his comment was give it a time. If you don't need it ready, give it time. If that haze is going to clear out, it will clear out with time, and especially with a lager and putting it through Loggering, that is the absolute best, crispiest, cleanest, and most delicious way to get it to clarify. But if you need it right now, do what Peter says.
Yeah.
All right.
Jimmy J, I've done a split batch with Kolsch yeast and lager yeast at 62. Definitely a difference where the fruity character was higher in the Kolsch yeast batch at 62. Yeah. Good. Which yeast did you use? That's good. That's good data.
Yeah.
I like it.
That's actually, I think we recommended that to him. Global? I think we gave him Global, maybe.
So Global will be the 3470 strain.
Yeah.
The Global was the...
Or it could
less
be
fruity
3470. I don't know. I remember that, Jimmy, and you should have brought both of them in. Or you still could.
I think he did.
Yeah, okay.
I actually think we might have drank them on the live stream.
We might have. Pamela Hakala.
We drink a lot of beer, so.
What is an IPK? India Pale Kolsch.
We made it up. It's not real. But it is, because we made it up. So.
Delicious. As we were saying, this is a great beer to really up the hop content on. Don't get it into the bitterness realm if you're going to do an IPA or an IPK on that. Still keep it really smooth and crispy. Don't pick hops that are going to hang on for a long time. I think we did Hallertau Blanc in Mandrina, Bavaria for it. Yeah, Ariana would be a great one for this one as well. But
any of the New Zealands that we've recommended before,
God,
like
yeah.
earlier on, all those kind of make sense.
Keep the cohumulones low. Keep the bitterness, the bitiness low on it. And definitely do lager this out. I think we lagered it for 3 weeks on that. It's going to calm the hops down. You are going to miss some of those bright beginning fresh hop flavors, but that's the point in an IPK.
Yeah, you don't want it to be an IPA or an IPL or,
Yeah. All right. Thoughts on brown malt and an English porter? How much would
Jimmy
you
also kind of made a little comment back on this too.
Are you talking about the malt comparison video?
Yeah.
Yeah. Brown malt and an English porter. How much would you recommend? Jimmy J did respond back that we did a brown malt comparison video. Actually, that one is phenomenal. And if you were going to do a brown porter, an English tatty porter, I 100% recommend Simpson's brown malt for that. It will be phenomenal. 30% base malt, 30% of that, and then just base malt will give you a beautiful tatty porter. But as far as brown malt in there, it really depends on where you're going. I would probably keep it 5% maybe.
If you're brewing, if you want, you need to know what brown malt, because brown malt is way different than brown malt used to be. Brown malt used to be the name for malt. It was the base malt, meaning actually diastatic. It was the Munich malt of beer that was made in England back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, all that. And so this brown malt created a brown color if you used enough of it. It was slightly roasty. It was all the things that make a porter, but that's because we didn't have good malting practices, so we couldn't separate out our malts into base malt and flavor malts, right? And so the brown malt that we have today is distinctly meant to separate out flavors. And brown malt from Baird's and brown malt from Simpson's and brown malt from Thomas Fawcett's and brown malt from any other maltster, they are not the same by a long stretch. You've got some brown malts that come in at 50 level bond, and you got some brown malts that come in at almost 200 level bond. And some of them are dry and roasty. Some of them are sweet and build melanoid in character. They're very, very different. And so to Jimmy's comment, definitely watch the video that we did comparing brown malts and then decide how you want to add that brown malt to your beer. Think of brown malts like when you're making chili as your cumin and your paprika and your chili powder and all that. They are not the same by far. They'll all make chili, but they will do it very differently. So you really got to think about what flavors you want with brown malt. That's probably one of, in terms of nomenclature for malts, brown malt is probably one of the most dramatic ranges that I've seen any maltster have.
Absolutely stunning in that video. We brewed 3 of the exact same beers, 3 different brown malts in it, and it gave us 3 different styles. Not only did it give us 3 different styles, it gave us 3 almost picture perfect different styles. And it goes a long way into explaining why sometimes you can't achieve certain flavors. One of them gave us a perfect nut brown. One of them gave us a perfect sweet brown. And one of them gave us a perfect tatty porter. Like, one is a porter and it's a brown malt, and that's all we added in. So that is something you do really need to be aware of. Pick the malt based on what you need to do, and then change the variances. If you were using Baird's, I could probably go up in the percentage a lot more. That's a very sweet brown malt in there.
Yep.
I could probably go 10%. If I'm using Simpson's, I'd probably drop it down to about 3. Or I'd just do a straight up Simpson's malt for everything on that, and just supplement it for base malt for a tatty porter. But I love tatty porter.
Yeah.
Man. More people need to make tatties. Anyway.
Also, great question, and I hope that everyone got everything we just said, because that's nomenclature in beer malts is it's a lot more than people think it is, and so that's really good information for everybody.
There's a reason on most of the recipe building sites they separate it out by brands of malts.
Yeah.
And if you don't already, you should try to do that if you have the ability, is actually put your brand of malt that you are using in for your recipes, because it will change it. If you've ever noticed differences in flavors, colors, attenuation rates from what your recipe should be, and you're not putting in the specific maltster's malt that you're using, try doing that, and it could really help you out.
Salad Official, what's your opinion with first wort hopping? It's useless. Never do it. It's not a real thing.
This is a thing that I'm going to go on. It makes a bigger difference to the brewer than it does to the beer. I enjoy first wort hopping, but most of the reason that I enjoyed first wort hopping is just because I dumped my hops in and then didn't worry about it and started a timer when it started.
I've made some, so the aromatics do still volatilize.
Yes.
There are some things that, I mean, it's one of those things that does make a big difference to the brewer. I did first wort hopping for a long time. As a commercial brewer, I will never do first wort hopping. It doesn't make sense for me. There's not a flavor you can get out of first wort hopping that you can't get out of other hopping techniques is the best way to put that. If it makes you difference process-wise, then 100% do it.
If you feel like you make better beer doing it, do it. I felt like it made a difference in my beer, but I can honestly tell you I have no idea what that difference would be besides maybe effort, and I just chuck the hops in the pot and then I'm running it off and I don't have to worry about remembering throwing them in when it's boiling. But like Peter said, on the commercial scale, we take so long to get to boil. Your hops are passing through the range where they're converting to IBUs for probably a good 20 minutes before it gets to boil. Versus the homebrew setting, I mean, it's like 5 minutes. It doesn't make a difference. If it makes you feel better, do it. If it doesn't, don't. The only thing I don't really like overall, not necessarily because of flavor, is adding hops to mash. And that's just because a lot of people don't understand that hops are poisonous for animals. And then they make dog biscuits out of those or feed them to cows or pigs or things like that. And then they make their animals sick. And don't make your animals sick. They're better than you are.
Yeah.
I like your animals
Usually.
more than you.
Probably.
You know. Also, it's not very good to add hops into your compost because they're antibacterial and they will kill good bacteria in your compost.
And Biowagon, subject change real quick. I have a very old sugar pump. Should I upstage it with the Riptide kit or just buy the Riptide pump? Buy the Riptide pump.
Yeah. It's always better just to get better equipment to start off with than say you'll upgrade it later. You're going to use it for so damn long in the brewing world, it's going to pay for itself almost immediately.
Yeah, and everything on the chugger pump is just less powerful than the Riptide pump. So if you're going to start, if you ever get a conical and you want a CIP, you can't do that with the chugger pump. You can do it with the Riptide pump, no matter what your scale is. There's a lot of things that the Riptide pump we use a Riptide pump all the way up to a 2-barrel system, which is crazy. Like, it's a homebrew size pump, but it's powerful enough to do what we needed to do. If you ever want a CIP, if you ever get a conical, then the chugger pump just won't do it for you. The Riptide pump will, even up to our scale. So
yeah. Jordan Thurston, thoughts on dry hop sours? New Belgium's Le Terrier, among others, and any hop recommendations for that style? I will tell you, I love Le Fric way more than Le Terrier, which Le Terrier's base is Le Fric. But I also love Le Terrier. I think it's awesome. Hops should be added into sours way more often. I think it's something we should do because it does really fun, cool things to the hop flavors. Any hop recommendations for that style? Generally something that's going to have a lot more fruit terpenes in it than anything else. I would stay away from the spicy, earthy, and woody varietals, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't. Sabro is incredible, absolutely incredible. All the Australian and New Zealand brands will be great for that. Most of the Americans, because especially when you have citrus in there, the acid just grabs onto the fruit and the citrus flavors and it just pops it straight out. It absorbs all the bitterness on it. So basically for me, I'd stay away from anything that's just earthy and spicy.
hops, aka doggy death pellets.
Hops are doggy death pellets. And that is another thing for you guys that don't know this. PSA warning. Hops are deadly for dogs, so please don't let your dog drink your beer.
We got a couple more questions, but we also got to start wrapping this up since we are
Because,
open.
yeah, you know, it's bad for them. Please don't. Pamela Hakala, what is the difference between a tatty porter and other porters? It is its own unique style of porter, like robust porter, Baltic porter, anything like that. Tatty porters are also sometimes called London porters or brown porters. They were the original porters. When porters developed, they were more of a brown color than they were black, mainly because we didn't have black patent malts at that time, or black malts at that time. They still do have the really high roasty, toasty flavors to them. They just don't quite have the blackness that's associated with it. So porter roastiness, but kind of a little bit more of that brown body burned bread or bread crust flavor going on in there. Super delicious. I recommend trying one. Normally you can find Samuel Smith in a lot of grocery stores. They have a tatty porter. It's wonderful. Try it. Putty tats. Yeah. Where do you guys stand on hop tea? Can be really, really darn delicious. Okay, I think that we're through most questions on that.
It can be delicious, but it doesn't give you all the hop flavors that you want.
Yeah, hop tea is not.
It's not a good, how to taste hops.
Hop tea is actually a great way on how to taste hops and new hops. Just keep in mind that when you're making hop tea, it's not actually as efficient. It's not pulling off all the flavors that it normally would because you don't have the sugars for the fats to bond to and hold the flavor into your liquid. It's just water. So it's not going to be the exact same flavor profile. And also on that same point, you don't have sugars or alcohol in that water. So the hops will be much more clear and present than they would be in your beer. But great way to also taste them. Good way to get some of the good hop numminess in there. And honestly, pretty delicious if you just, like teas. Yeah. So, hey. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We had some great questions on it. And, subscribe to our stuff. Press the like buttons. Comment on all of our stuff. But let's get the algorithm working in our favor. I don't know which one, but one of them. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. All the algorithms. Get the AI working for us, gall darn it. See you next week.